All right, today we're diving into two of the most important and, let's be honest, often confusing ideas in software testing. Yep, we're talking about false positives and false negatives, and why getting them right is just absolutely essential. Okay, picture this. You've been working all day, you run a test, and bam, it fails. The first thing you think is, yes, found a bug. But what if it's not a real bug? What if you're about to spend the next 3 hours chasing a ghost? So, to figure that out, here's our game plan. We'll start with the absolute basics of testing, then talk about how to actually read a test result. After that, it's the main event, false positives versus false negatives. We'll also see what happens to a real bug and wrap it all up with the kind of mindset you need to be a great tester. Right. So before we can even start hunting for ghosts or bugs, we all need to be on the same page. Let's get our vocabulary straight, because there are 3 terms that are the foundation for everything else. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with a human error. You know, a developer is coding, they make a tiny mistake, maybe a typo, or they just misunderstood something. It happens. Exactly. And that little human error, it creates a fault in the code. This is what most of us just call a bug. It's the actual, tangible, incorrect line of code that's now sitting there in the software. And that fault can eventually cause a failure. That's the part we, the users, actually see. The app crashes, a button doesn't work, it gives you the wrong number. So just remember that chain. A human error leads to a fault, which causes a failure. Okay, so we've got the lingo down. Now when a test runs, what is it really telling us? Because it's not just a simple pass or fail. Oh no, it's way more interesting than that. So this little grid here basically breaks down the 4 possible outcomes of any test. Think about it like this. Across the top, that's reality. The software either has a bug or it doesn't. And then down the side, that's what your test says happened. It either reported a failure or it didn't. When you put those together, you get 4 very different situations. Exactly. 2 of those boxes are great. That means your test is working correctly. You either found a bug that was actually there, or you correctly said, hey, everything's fine. But those other 2, well, that's where things get tricky. And sometimes really expensive. And that brings us right to the heart of it all, those 2 tricky scenarios. It's the ghost in the machine versus a bug that's hiding in plain sight. Okay, let's talk about the false positive. This is our ghost bug. The test screams failure, but after hours of searching, the developers realize the code is perfect. The problem was in the test itself. It's a total false alarm. On the other hand, you have the false negative, which is way more sinister. The test says everything's great, ship it. Everyone high fives. But lurking deep in the code is a real nasty bug that your test just completely missed. This isn't a false alarm, this is a hidden danger that just slipped right past you. So why does this matter so much? Well, a false positive is annoying, right? It just wastes a ton of developer time and money chasing a problem that was never there. But a false negative, that can be a catastrophe. That's a real bug escaping into the wild, into the hands of your customers. It can lead to crashes, lost data, and it can absolutely destroy a company's reputation. One is a headache, the other is a potential disaster. So let's go back to the happy path for a second. Let's say we get a true positive. The test worked, we found a real bug. Awesome. But what happens then? It's not as simple as someone just fixing it. A real bug goes on a whole journey. This journey is called the defect lifecycle. First, a bug report is created. Its status is new. Then it gets assigned to a developer. That developer works their magic and marks it as fixed. But we're not done. It has to go back for retesting to make sure the fix actually worked. And only after it passes that retest can it finally be marked as done. And there's a golden rule in this whole process. A developer can never, ever close their own bug report. Never. Only the tester who found it can change that status to done. It's all about that independent verification. It keeps everyone honest and ensures the bug is actually truly squashed. You know, all of this, the definitions, the processes, the life cycles, it all comes down to one thing, really, the human element. Because telling the difference between a real bug and a ghost requires a very, very specific way of thinking. There's a perfect quote for this. It says, "A great tester has a healthy level of professional pessimism." I love that phrase. Think about it. A developer's job is to build something and hope it works. A tester's job is to look at that same thing and assume it's already broken, and then do everything they can to prove it. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So in the end, that pessimism, which sounds so negative, is actually the very thing that leads to better, safer, more reliable software for all of us. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. In a world of software this complex, is a little bit of pessimism actually the most optimistic tool we have?